Well, I'm Suzanne Johnson. I'm in my day job is managing the ergonomics unit at Workplace Health and Safety Queensland, and at night and in my spare time I'm on the board of the Human Factors Ergonomics Society of Australia. And a little bit about who we are before we actually kick off into the evening is we are a peak organisation for human factors and ergonomics, and we provide resources and activities to our members and those with an interest in human factors. So it's great to see the number here tonight. Another role we have is we provide accreditation and maintenance of qualified professional human factors and ergonomists, and they're called a certified professional ergonomist. So there's quite a number of you online tonight, so welcome. And finally, I guess we also represent the human factors ergonomics community in practice across education, legislation and regulation. And part of what tonight's about is presenting a position on certain topics, and you might have checked in with some of our other position papers. So tonight's about good work design, and I just wanted to flag also working with this group and participating in the Human Factors Society. We're a very diverse group, you've probably gathered already, and to name a few, we've got engineers and designers, academics, up to allied health professionals, and there's a huge array of diversity of people working in rail and air and healthcare, government, user experience, human computer tech, disability, and the list goes on. So it's a really exciting group to be part of. And when you join, which we hope some of you might consider doing, it's a hugely experienced group of professionals. So a little bit about the format of this evening, and Nick, you've already mentioned, we've got about 40 minutes that we're going to hear from Sarah and Elise shortly. And they have designed it in a way to be as interactive as we can. So I know they're keen for you to put up questions in the chat box and comments so we can respond to that as they go. I know they're both happy to pause and respond where we can. And feel free to do that. There is a little hand function in the Zoom, but if you can use the chat box, we'd probably prefer that one. We will try to get to as many questions as we can, but what we're going to do is record those questions if we can't get to them all and put out something through the Human Factors newsletter in the next wee while. So feel free to subscribe to make sure you get that, and we'll respond to any other inquiries from there. So lastly, as Nick said, we are recording the session. So if for some reason you have to duck off or want to share it with someone else, we will have the recording available. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Sarah and Elise. And I'm sure I could say a lot about them, but very briefly, Elise Crawford is a lecturer in Occ Health and Safety at Human Factors at CQU and up in Rocky. So welcome, Elise. And Sarah Pazell is the Managing Director of Viva Health at Work and affiliated with 4 Australian universities, all around teaching and researching good work design. So we've got some great people here tonight to share this with us. So welcome, and over to you, ladies.
Thanks so much, Suzanne, Nick. We're really excited to represent HFESA and speak about good work design, represent some of the diverse opinions and thoughts, knowledge and experience that came from such an experienced group, and also consultation out into the workforce. But we're talking about our specific position on good work design. And we'll be talking about, what is good work? What's good work design? Who benefits from this? How is it implemented? What happens without good work design, the role of the human factors ergonomics professional, and the position of HFESA, as well as any polls. We'll be taking some polls while we speak and have some time for question and answer in between those breaks. Elise will be speaking with me, and she can interject, I can interject with one another, just to kind of understand a little bit more and articulate some of the key concepts. So what is good work? There is a constructive social movement underway, and that is to design work for health and productivity. And that's incredibly exciting because in times like this, during a pandemic, work can provide the place, space, and structure to be socially connected, even with geographic distance It can allow us to engage in some constructive activity. So work generally can be quite sustaining. It provides structure, meaning, routine, some sense of coherence. It reduces poverty and economic disparity and social exclusion, and can reduce anxiety. So work-based rehabilitation is effective. It can condition people with an injury or disability. We're interested in work to condition a general workforce also. We'll be speaking about that today. How we socialize, how we learn new things through work, how we grow. I think it's important to understand that the fundamental basis of work has some great positives, because the health indicators for workers and their families are far more positive than those of non-workers. There are less prevalent rates of smoking, obesity, and generally there's more activity among workers. So children of workers versus non-workers also have better health profiles. There's fewer ill health metabolic conditions broadly among workers, such as diabetes, cancer, or cardiovascular disease. So we have a good platform to leverage ongoing design so that good work outweighs any adversity, any exposure to hazards. Beyond this, we want to imagine work broadly, that when it's designed well, it actually serves as an elixir. Work itself can be a prescription for health if it is designed well. And design literacy and capability is fundamental to this. So the goal is to balance the scales of work. Work needs to be conditioning, the positive. Good work is work that is purposeful, that can fortify and condition, as we spoke about, where it engages workers and you can have a very positive impact. The work that you do is meaningful to you. The work environment can be enterprising and conducive to health and happiness, and that could be the social as well as the built environment, urban environment. And we want to think about good work promoting and protecting health. I like to leverage this outside of a health and safety agenda right through to a broad systems approach in the organization to look at promoting health and productivity, sustainability. Elise, can you tell us a little bit about what it means when we make the association, we draw from this good work, meaning that it's human-centered. It's almost an assumption among our professionals, our colleagues in human factors and ergonomics.
Yes, so the premise behind good work design is a genuine value for humanity and its continued existence. So work plays an important role in our lives. It improves our lives. So it can lead to an overall brighter future for humanity through an empowered workforce. So good work design follows those human-centered approaches. This means that the focus is on the people and what and who they interact with at work. So it is inclusive and it ensures good work is available to all workers at all levels. So from the CEO to managing director to middle management, supervisors, frontline workers, all the way down to the cleaners who arrive after everyone else has left. So work is designed with the workers' needs, their capabilities and limitations in mind. So for instance, we know from studies from Yerkes and Dodson on the relationship between performance and arousal that we do not perform well in jobs when low levels of arousal are required. We get distracted, we fatigue easy, and it's hard to remain focused on the task. And conversely, we also don't do well at very high levels of arousal. So we panic, we forget, we get flustered and then distracted. And so people become stressed at both extremes, and this impacts their ability to respond to work situations as we might otherwise expect. So work needs to be designed with the human capabilities and limitations in mind, as I said. So today, this is increasingly important because we are adopting more sophisticated technology. A lot more automation is coming in, integrated technologies and systems that put people and workers in a position that involves hours of monitoring technical systems, and then on occasion they're required to quickly step in and take over, and usually at the most difficult situations. So by not designing with consideration of how workers work best, we can undermine our ability to draw on their best attributes, such as creativity and big picture thinking, problem solving, and the rest. So on the other hand, we know people are different and their abilities and thresholds vary. So to encourage the best in people, human-centered design looks at the range as well as what's common amongst workers. So human-centered design involves really listening to your workers, to learn from them. So they are the ones doing the work every day, so they know what they're talking about. And so we want to know the knowledge about the worker, the work they're doing, the tools they use, the equipment they use, the environment that they're working in, and the people that they interact with. And this helps to inform the design and to design work so that workers perform at their best. So involving workers in decisions that impact them is a great way to gain buy-in when changes are made. It creates ownership of the interventions, and it demonstrates that you value their opinion by involving them and you have their best interests at hand. And that said, though, it needs to be genuine. So it's not just a tick and flick matter where you say, oh yes, okay, yes, we tick the box, we've consulted with the workers, and then you go on your merry way. That can actually have a converse effect. So you need to explain, if you aren't adopting somebody's ideas that you've just asked for, then they need to understand why, or at least get feedback on their contribution. But if we consider our workers as a valuable resource, then we need to be able to help them and give them that opportunity to contribute. So human-centered design principles allows good work design to consider all aspects of human performance and to enable prosperous working conditions. So it focuses on people at work, as the name suggests. So in practice, what is good work design? Well, it involves co-design. It looks like consultation, participation, practices among workers, and all the other staff related to that organisation. And I guess at the end of the day, what we want is to advance organisational strategy so that workers can respond quickly to problems as they arise while promoting and protecting them.
Elise, what I love is you're talking about good work design, helping people function right at the peak of their performance curve, kind of that Goldilocks principle, the just right degree of optimum working, not baby bear, papa chair, mama chair, but the just right chair for them. And I love also that you're talking about everybody in the work system, but also extending beyond a worker, even suppliers, people related to the business, to the industry, and things broader than an organization or a human, things like the natural world and the issues of sustainability, the protection of the environment, which actually contributes to human health. So this is broad systems thinking, and there's systematic approaches. Can you speak a little bit about this?
So first of all, in thinking about being systematic or thinking, involving systems thinking, we need to think about what is the system at hand. So we've got to consider all of those elements that are interconnected, that all work towards that central goal. So looking at that image on the screen there, that blue center. But it's not just the system, it's the system within its context. So it does involve those inputs from suppliers and then the outputs that we affect others with. So systems thinking to me is the key to continuous improvement. So to solve a problem or to look for opportunities, the whole system is considered, including those inputs and outputs that I mentioned. So considering the system within its context in which it exists. And this is important because if suppliers can no longer supply the goods and materials and services that we need, then sooner or later our system will fail because it can't be supported. And similarly, knowing what the demand is in our outputs, so our goods and services for clients and customers, and even knowing our business competitors can help inform that direction of our business to remain productive and in the marketplace. So it's very much a systems and a whole of organisation process.
And Elise, you know, we have focused so much on all the benefits of work when we've been working throughout this committee. I love that idea. We were really conscious to make sure we had an understanding and could translate an understanding that good work design goes well above and beyond a health and safety agenda. That we often assume sometimes that we just go to work and we need to sit down, buckle up, strap in, watch out, because it's all downhill from here, you know, sliding down this slide, planning to manage hazards that arise, watch out, they will happen, and prevent injuries. Good work design certainly should prevent injuries, catastrophes, fatalities, disablement, but it's incredibly important to understand that it's not just about what can be contained or constrained. That should be a bare minimum. Instead, good work design is about this recognition and that design of work can be a medium to fortify, condition, strengthen, and develop. Work is that Play-Doh, if you will, that can be molded. The very nature of work, the work systems, our surroundings could be an elixir to health when it's designed well. Now, more than ever in times of a pandemic, this means that we can really consider the varieties of work that are best suited to our diverse workforce. It's a ripe opportunity just to look at a clean palette of good work design, all the flexibility and the agility that's needed in the workplace, and still adhering to legal standards and requirements. So when we think about the worker, we understand a little bit about how we want to work, what I know, what I feel, and what I can do. We're going to talk about different perspectives, but first, Suzanne, you have a poll for us. Poll the audience.
We can't hear you, Suzanne.
Technology, sorry, I'm muted. So you've got a poll on there on the screen. You can see everyone's responding. So how closely does good work design align with your current work? This is just an interesting piece. Yeah, you're already realizing the benefits, experimenting with some of the principles. You might be here just, it sounds like a good idea. How do you start? Or is it a new concept? What's the fuss about? So we'll just give people a brief moment. I think 80, approaching 90 responses, and then Nectarius will let us know what we can actually see. It looks like 40, 46, about half of you are experimenting with some of the principles. There is a few people, 22% seems like a good idea. A few just learning, just setting out what's it all about. And then we've got 29% already realizing the benefits. So good to see. Is that the final one, Nectarius?
Yes,
Yeah.
120 people.
Yeah, great. So you can see, I think everyone can see on the screen the results. So we got the winning is experimenting with some of the principles. And I think that's sort of what we're hearing about too, is that people are looking at the principles, applying, but not quite, you know, operationalized fully, or just exploring how they can use it.
Quite encouraging that
29% are realizing the benefits.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, that's great. Well, we look forward to hearing some of those. Maybe in the chat function you can tell us.
We'll be talking a little bit about projects and programs, but what I found in my thesis, which was all about good work design and, you know, how to launch this in a human-centered organization, was that every project that related to human factors and ergonomics had some benefit in terms of risk reduction, health promotion, cost benefit, et cetera. Every project and a program in a sustainable organization, an organization that was resilient, had 6 times those benefits. So I think it makes sense that if people are experimenting and some people are actually doing this aspect of good work design, some aspect of good work design, you've at least got that percentage realizing some benefits. So from the worker's perspective, we often think, look, I like the job that I do. This might reflect an organization that's got good work design occurring. I enjoy the environment in which I work. I feel supported by the people with whom I work. I know that my opinion matters and my daily tasks are important and my work makes a difference. I feel like my workmates and managers care about me and my work, and I can perform well with the tools and resources that are provided to me. these are the kinds of ideas that might come from your workers in a sustainable program of good work design. From the perspective of the organization, you might understand, look, leadership, governance, I know that I can trust our people to sustain and build resilience in our operations. I feel like innovation is possible, like our sustainability objectives can be met, that we're agile, responsive. I can advance a unified vision and strategy and remain fiercely competitive in the marketplace. And yes, I can make a difference as an organization. What might suppliers think?
Yeah, so suppliers want to know that they can trust you as an organization to act in just ways. They'd like to feel that by supplying, that your supplies will be used reliable and used as intended, and have that confidence. And they like to communicate with you in an authentic and regular manner, so that if there is any issue to address, it gets addressed. And at the end, they would like to learn, I think they would like to learn from the experiences of their customers and their workers, or who would be the workers, so that they can improve their own business.
And the community?
And well, at the end of the day, what occurs at work extends to the community. And so throughout history, society has kept governments and working arrangements in check with social values when they're tested. And it would be nice if discontent and uprising was not the mechanism for keeping businesses in check. But I see the community would want to know that their friends and family enjoy the work they do, and that people with whom they work, and they would feel like the business makes a positive contribution to the community's well-being and prosperity, that they can trust the good work is available to help strengthen our communities. So the community should not need to worry about their environment, their people, and the goods and services they purchase and receive.
Let's watch a little bit of video snippets. We've got several videos now as resource on the HFESA website talking about good work design.
I think design of work is really looking at engaging with all the key players, really understanding the end user and understanding what the actual task is, and looking at all the physical elements, the psychosocial elements, and obviously the organisational elements as well too.
Good work design in the workplace is a critical factor in today's workplaces. If you don't get the design of a system of work correct, and it can be an item within that system or it can be the whole system, you won't get the productivity you require out of that.
Ask people, you will make the same mistakes as everybody else has. If you do ask people, you get buy-in, you get understanding of why it's important, you get all sorts of benefits.
The questions I often ask people is, what do you talk to your family about as a good day at work, and what do you prefer not being a good day at work? What are the things that are important to you? And generally they're things of the psychosocial nature of how people enjoy working with other people.
It would be great to see that good work design is embedded into these workplaces where it's just the way they do business.
So let's consider for a moment what good work design is, not just problem-based, but importantly, opportunity-based, flipping frameworks that are traditional in safety management right through to a whole of organizational approach when you have design thinking, design literacy, and capability. Elise, can you walk us through the main phases of good work design?
Yes, so there are, as you can see, there are three main phases where we start with the discovery phase and then go through design and realization. However, there's a lot of interaction in between those areas while you're testing and trialing your design. So there are times when you're going to have to go back into the discovery area or into the discovery phase to learn more about various aspects. And the same with realization. You'll start exploring, well, what are the outcomes if we use this particular design? And then you may think, well, we may be able to improve that a bit better. So you'll go back into the design phase. You may need to even find more information in the discovery phase. But above that, you can see that throughout this process, it involves engaging the people, the workers, and the people who are going to be impacted. And so that you really need their input, because this is going to be something that they're going to have to do, and you want that sustainable and accurate. So Sarah, I was just thinking maybe you'd like to take everyone through each of those phases individually.
Absolutely. The discovery phase, engaging people, so getting people to become involved in meaningful ideas, problem solving, and opportunity realization, studying the context of the work they do. What's a day in the life of, a moment in the life of, what actually happens in the workplace versus what's just imagined or prescribed, and how is it disclosed, those kinds of concepts. And sometimes this means just going out into the workplace. This is me in a quote unquote conference room with roadwork practitioners in construction. This is our conference. It's right there in the heart of what's happening and amongst the mobile plant, the equipment, the actual job, trying to understand what's a day in the life of, what's meaningful. And if you had an unfettered path and you could just simply identify what works well, but what could actually even be realized to have improvement. What do you dream? How would you design it? What would it look like? How would it be disclosed? This concept of appreciative inquiry is part of your discovery. Observations, conversations, being right in the heart of it in natural and simulated environments. And going through from this understanding of what somebody does and the environment in which they work, the context and the conditions of the work, jumping through to the design phase of, yes, finding if there's any roadblocks, finding if there's any bottlenecks, trying to solve problems, of certainly trying to contain risk and reduce risk, but also looking at how do we move through this opportunity to create this process to create opportunities. I often ask people to think, okay, how are we going to work through, whether we use visualization, simulation, whether we actually look at a risk assessment for manual tasks in acute and cumulative exposures, and what could be reduced, what needs to be affected in both the cognitive psychosocial realm as well as the physical realm and the environment. What happens when you start to do drawings and design iterations? What happens in that design process when you've got workers involved, so that the outcome, what's realized, is also a reflection of the process, the co-design process, where workers have been engaged, supply chain, manufacturers, related parties, trainers, managers and team leaders, et cetera, safety folks, they've all been engaged in the process, procurement, finance, workforce strategy. The process of co-design can be socially engaging, and that's an outcome to measure equally as whatever artifact, whatever item is created. That can be something positive. In that realization phase, this is really where you can celebrate, where you deliver the goods, you have innovation, you can optimize, you improve human performance. I ask people to think, okay, what have we done throughout this chain of this work design chain of looking at, okay, an organizational cycle. Yes, we've hopefully contained catastrophes, reduced this risk for catastrophes, fatalities, disablement, disease, injuries, time off work, discomforts, but then have we moved into the space of creating comfort? Have we moved into the space of trying to actually engage our workforce through co-design? Have we looked at industry liaison? Have we got productivity occurring? Have we reached some sustainability goals? What's happened to improve our health and well-being, going all the way through that spectrum? And we look at some companies who've done this well. Medibank Private and Docklands in Melbourne started to look at how to combine 3 of their buildings into one. And they had this agile work design strategy with a docking station, a central staircase. Workers in this building took 1,600 steps more per day than in the previous buildings. So they were helping their metabolic health conditioning. They had a lot of plants, a lot of foliage. They had obviously space to make meals. And now the same concept of at least being adaptable and agile can be thought of how we actually keep people safe and protected in COVID times and respond to having a building environment that people still want to go to when they do have the option to collaborate versus all just the home office and alternative distributed workplace strategies. So in these types of spaces, there was a little bit of play, there was a lot of comfort, and people said, look, I feel more collaborative, connected to our health program, I feel healthier, I'm more productive. And the real stats for the business were that also the business had a 5% reduction in call center absenteeism, not to mention the reduction in the real estate footprint. And I know that that will be sort of the interest for a lot of procurement and finance people with this new agile distributed workforce strategy stimulating from pandemics is, how do we do this, but also how do we protect a day in the life of the transport and the folks who are at home working? These kinds of concepts will be rife for good work design.
Can I just interrupt there, Sarah? On that,
yes.
That second example with the ping pong table, I thought what a lovely way to encourage further exercise while they're relaxing and conditioning the body, not only physically but socially. Just a wonderful idea.
I'll take you on anytime, Elise. I love it. Exactly. And so that you can bond in ways that, you know, can't always be found in the structure of an actual project, and relax some of the social barriers so that when you are back to working in a project, there's a little more trust. There's been playfulness, you've had some shared meals in this type of space, there's trust. And then you go to the actual design of the work itself, and solving problems as a group is a part of adult learning. The fundamental principles of adult learning is solving problems, shared problem solving. So this concept of coming up with some co-design, you're already helping to the learning process, the improvement, the growth by just using co-design and getting the process and the realized outcomes all to have great benefit. So in a heavy industry scenario, part of the discovery was going out and looking and inviting people to come up with some good ideas about not just anything that was wrong in the workplace. And I think this is really important. Oftentimes we're trying to look at lag indicators, injury history, hazard reports that are just dilute and not specific and contextualized to a task analysis, these very delayed registers of hazard registers. But in fact, going out to say, you know, what works well? Well, we love the idea of having this big, broad laboratory soil campaign for months on end. There's extra work for people available. We're getting good data to manage the mine safety operations up at Rio Tinto WIPA. So what works well, but what could work even better? And in this campaign, the laboratory technicians were out 14-hour days, sometimes kneeling, as you're seeing, collecting soil samples. So these types of tasks might never have been reported on a hazard register because it's just the way work is always done. And that's critical here. You're looking at your near rights. What accommodations are people already making to try and correct work and improve the work when things ultimately, you know, fundamentally still going fairly well. And that's quite different from, again, some of the fundamental approaches that you may find in traditional safety management. So the discovery process is going out, having these conversations and looking how to optimize work using that process of appreciative inquiry. And then some great ideas come up from the workers themselves. And in this case, they had an extendable side tray to their utes so that they could stand, walk, move, kneel, get out of the heavy mobile equipment on a mine site. And they were looking at adding some automatic tires when they're TYERS to try and tie these bags. Yeah. So this was celebrated, shared with other business units. Good ideas happen at the end of the month. And it really is an example of how you can leverage a project to now think about an entire program. And this is what Rio Tinto did. And I think we have to learn from success. We need to study success and learn from success. In this organization, there was a participatory ergonomics program launched originally by our colleague, Dr. Gary Dennis, who did a lot of the facilitation. And I went out to do post-program review and part of my thesis and look at how to continually optimize the program that was running. how to extend it outside of the health and safety realm and make it more whole of business. But they started with some significant goals, and they were not driven by these lag indicator improvements, but I will reflect upon the improvements. Their hand injuries dropped per annum from 20 to 1. This is after 6 years of running the program. The program has now been going several years after these stats. Their musculoskeletal disorders, their sprains, their strains, reduced significantly, greater than 85 to less than 20. All of the stats that all the injury management and safety teams and productivity teams like to look at had market improvements. The frequency rates of industry injuries dropped, the work cover claims dropped, the statutory work cover costs and common law claims costs dropped significantly during this time. But what did they do? They targeted the lead indicators. They believed in the scientific evidence that good work design has positive effect and that design literacy and capability is essential in a business. So they put their resource into design. They had 20 design champions versus 1 trained in injury management. So they were focusing on the improvement, not just the cleanup. They targeted 30 controls per annum. So this meant 5 controls, which means design changes. 5 design strategies to redesign a task, a piece of equipment, a tool among 6 business units throughout the business every year, 30 controls per year. So this means they might have identified hundreds of tasks, but they've only started to go through the discovery process within 75 of those. And then they went through the process of actually really articulating hazards and opportunities and testing, trialing, doing iterations, doing that back and forth process that you spoke about, Elise, of trying to experiment, test something out, and then before they brought it into a realized phase, they still met this goal each year, every year, of 30 design changes in the business, each year, every year for that 6 years. And then they were the winner of the Mine Health Safety Queensland Awards 2015 because of those statistics that I mentioned earlier. And they targeted tasks that would reduce musculoskeletal disorders and hand injuries, but they also communicated and celebrated. Then they realized, well, hang on, there's also a heck of a lot of effect, positive effect happening in our efficiency, our productivity, our capabilities, and some of these elements of social engagement by designing for diversity.
Can we take a question, ladies?
Sure.
So there's some interesting chat on the line, and I just thought it was good timing to raise one of the questions, which is from, they're shifting fast now, to hear a little bit about experience around collaborating with design professions, architects, interior designers, engineers. You know, do they bring agendas? Any comment on working with those groups?
So I think the human factors ergonomics professional, it can be a stellar champion of good work design, which means project coordination, working with all of these talented designers that you spoke about, the architects, the designers, the engineers, and trying to leverage what can occur with that existing design literacy and capability and translate that to other business units. So for example, if you have a basic manual task that's been redesigned, if I skip back, then sure, it might help your health and safety teams to say that you have a task that is now a reduced risk for acute and cumulative musculoskeletal disorder. Nice, simple, basic, it's meaningful to the workers. But then your occupational rehabilitation teams might say, we've actually got a task now that can be assigned to workers who are in a conditioning program, a work hardening and conditioning program. Your workforce strategist leaders may say, great, we actually have a task now that is more suitable for youth, older workers, men and women. So we've achieved an agenda to design for diversity and support our inclusivity policies. Your finance and procurement teams might say, great, this is more efficient, a more efficient allocation of staffing. It's highly more productive. So we've met some marks. Continuous quality improvement can claim some realization of benefits. And you go through the list of workforce engagement managers because people were involved in a co-design process. So as long as somebody's facilitating that, it is essential to work with design professionals that you've mentioned to actually realize these outcomes. They already have this design literacy, and the goal in good work design is to translate those skill sets into the work, the agendas, the strategies, unify and integrate this all among different business units.
And I think what can help that is to get everybody on the same page with what you're talking about. So using definitions for terms, because what one word might seem to somebody else is not what another person uses it for. And I've come across that before. But representing things visually, I think, really helps so that everyone can see what you mean. So that building those skills, I think, is important.
And those design professionals that were mentioned, it's great for an organization to leverage the in-house skill and capability, but also those external designers might have cross-industry experience where innovation can be best bred, bringing ideas from an industry that you might not think has any relationship to your business. You cross-pollinate some fantastic ideas by having this breadth of experience of both internal and external advisors to a project. So,
Sarah, I think also acknowledging the role of the purchasing, the procurement
absolutely
section. That's a comment that's also been very validly made.
Absolutely. For anything to happen fairly quickly, then procurement is very important for the relationship with the suppliers, the tenders, the agreements that go out, the tender specifications. If those can include design specification, just like they do in Transport in New South Wales, puts something in their specifications to work with engineers that they need to have had some sort of human factors integration involved in the design of any equipment or service that's supplied. So, that can be brought into the fabric of an organization, the language of organization, the tacit knowledge, the shared knowledge in an organization, if they're always looking for improvement, not just containing something that can go wrong. So I'll give you an example in education. Now this has been applied in surgical training to look at competency, and it was an article in this concept of surgical training that I thought, okay, maybe we can also bring this into the university sector, but any training or education has relevance to a workplace. When we looked at redesigning an undergraduate course in occupational therapy, we started to assess, well, in this course, what are the actual knowledge, skills, and abilities, the tactics or the approaches and the tasks that people have to do. The heuristics is sort of includes the rule of thumb decisions that are made right in the spur of the moment, as well as the formal decision-making processes, and the inter and intrapersonal skill sets that are required to be a student in this course, as well as the situation awareness of everything happening around you. And this particular course involved a student acting as though they were a mock therapist and acting as though they were a mock client, a client with multiple sclerosis in this case. Then of course they had their own student projects. So they had several tasks and roles to fulfill. So we did this analysis, that I've just run through, with every single quote unquote student role. So this can be done in the workplace too. And we found out that, there were things that could be done differently so that people can improve their learning and their engagement. What you're seeing now is an example of tag team simulation, where we pretend we have a case conference, or in the case of workplace, a work meeting. And to go through the learning prospect of it, people play roles, role play. Everybody in the audience, though, could be called upon at any moment to suddenly play a role. That means that they're attentive and they're engaged. It's just like right now in this video conference, if I suddenly put myself on mute and called up anyone from the audience to say, right, for the next 2 minutes you're speaking, you're probably more likely to be attentive than checking your phone right now, yeah?
I love the idea.
It's a random, so pull people out, and it constantly, and if they can either assign themselves to take over, or the facilitator can walk around and tag somebody on the shoulder, tag team simulation, right? So this is something that we found enhanced the learning of the students. We also use some virtual reality. We use some spatial collaboration to look at camera technology, 360-degree camera technology, and look at environments such as homes and workplaces, and bring that back so that students could simulate a situation and have a valid space where different scenarios could be considered of what a client who had multiple sclerosis would have to go through in that space. And this helped with efficiency, so students didn't have to go out randomly to different workplaces, and the lecturer wouldn't actually know what they've really seen. So we've used a little more simulation, visualization, spatial collaboration, and virtual reality in this class too. All of these human factors approaches can help in learning and engagement in the workplace too. What happens without good work design, Elise?
Okay, so some of you are probably thinking, okay, so what? Well, I don't know of anyone who intentionally wants to get someone else hurt at work. We certainly don't want a manslaughter lawsuit brought on us. But if you don't design for good work, what have you got? It's that, you know, if it's poor work, then this is a serious risk for your workers' well-being. They can get overwhelmed, get burnout, they'll take more sick leave, there'll be more workplace injuries. And to go to work and to be free of getting hurt or contracting an illness is a basic human right. So it's a given and it's the baseline. So to be without good design does not mean that you're not meeting your health and safety duty of care responsibilities. However, you might be. But without knowing, how are you sure that you're meeting your obligations? And that's the real issue with this. So the work health and safety regulators stipulate various ways to eliminate and minimize risk. However, the regulator is silent when it comes to how you do this, because every organization is different. We have our own context. So we have to work that out for ourselves. So if health and safety is approached in a minimalist way, then we may fall short of preventing injury. So for example, if we do not address sedentary ill health behavior because we have not implemented good work design, we might not have realized the opportunity to better condition our workforce. And whether it is fathomable, sorry, I need a drink of water, that we could be found liable for contributing to cumulative disease states and ill health, and still yet to be tested in the legal system. But
it's just like that example, Elise, of the extra 1,600 steps that were taken with good design.
Yeah, and playing ping pong.
I think we need to get Elise a ping pong table. Let's break to another. Let's break to another poll. Suzanne, you've got a poll. Second and last poll.
Yes, we've got another poll. So it's come up on the screen, guys. What do you think is the most important workplace enabler for good work design? Is it leadership support, expertise to guide the process, time and dollars? Or is it engagement with workers? You've probably guessed there could be all of the above, but it's interesting to see what do we think the biggest, most important enabler is.
Yeah, we wanted to force a choice, didn't we?
I'm going to say the chat line is very active, ladies, so there's a few comments, questions, but I think while you're answering the poll, we'll certainly capture all of this, and I think it'd be really nice to have it summarised that people can. There's some really interesting comments coming in. So that's 112, we're nearly there. I think you've just closed it out. So no big surprise. This is often the case when we ask people what are the enablers, what are the barriers, and leadership supports very high, 63% of us think that's the biggest one. And then the second one's engagement with workers at 24. Interesting, expertise and time and money are coming in a lot lower than that. Thanks all.
Thanks so much. And there are ISO standards about the human-centered organization and guidance for management. So I think people should look to that. I just wrote about it in a blog today on LinkedIn about some of the standards that exist, international standards to how to be a human-centered organization. So what's the role of the human factors and ergonomics professional? Well, really, we like to understand what people do. We help the organization understand what people do, how they think, how they make their decisions, and where this work occurs in the real environment. So we'll help build design literacy and capability in terms of good work design, and harness the talents of the traditional designers that you spoke about earlier, Suzanne, and help imbue this throughout the organization, help translate this so that design principles can be understood readily by multiple business units so that good outcomes can happen. It's so much more than injury prevention. It is actual realization of conditioning, productivity, health, and well-being. So I cannot state that enough. And we have some resources when people are curious. The HFESA website has position papers now. Our position, a short paper, a long paper, the generic press release, and some general communication that's a little more accessible than the formal writing, a journey map graphic that we've used and referred to, and some videos that you saw snippets of today. We've been talking about design. We've been talking about what good work is and what good work design is. We've been talking about who benefits and how it's implemented, what happens without good work design, and the role of the human factors ergonomics professional as a work designer, champion of this, and the position of HFESA. So essentially it leads to personal and organizational success, prosperity. We design and develop literacy and capability in design thinking, and we can advance and facilitate this. But the goal now, so what, now what, now what? Let's go ahead and try some good work design. Let's start with some projects, something tangible, meaningful to a cohort of workers, a group of workers. Can you embed that in your organization to make it a more sustainable program? And then aside from just being a standalone program, how do you make it organic and part of the fabric of organization, where design thinking is simply what you do, and you unify and integrate the targets of every business unit so they have overlapping benefits and much more focused approach to achieving good success. Implement, you track, you measure, you communicate, and you celebrate. It should be the fabric of an organizational activity. Now is the perfect time to be competitive during pandemic management. This is a way to champion this. We've had some great people involved. Elise?
Yes, well, in closing, I'd like to present the rest of our committee members who worked with Sarah and myself and Suzanne and Nectarius to co-create the Human Factors and Ergonomics Society of Australia's Good Work Design position paper. You can see here we've got just as many people represented as Suzanne mentioned earlier, of people who've come here. So you can see this paper's undergone, and the products we produce has undergone robust peer review. So we're quite pleased with its outcome. So please help yourself to the materials developed. There's a long and short position paper and videos and case studies, and they're all available tonight at the website. So, you know, when you leave here, you can take advantage of that.
Suzanne, did you have questions you wanted to address, or do you wish to address them?
Well, I'm just looking, the chat line's been really active. I wanted to flag, there was a comment from Karen around whether people have had experience with co-design in healthcare between the patient and the workers. So I thought that was an interesting point. And there is a site in Victoria, so we might put that comment up as well. There's a lot of comments. It's like, whoa. There was a comment, I thought it would be, we have to bring it up in this time, but someone flagged that since COVID, working from home, they've actually been able to design their work in a, I guess in a more controlled way and manage their positioning and how they're going about their work. So can't escape flagging that one in. I don't know if you guys want to comment on that, or there's been a lot of information coming out around, relating to good work design and working from home.
There's tremendous opportunity to bring agility into our thinking about good work design, because we many times have had some of these policies, but they've just been on paper and not really well realized. They've only been a very random outlier to implement. And now by tour de force, you know, we have so many people pushing the boundaries of some of the existing policies and asking for new policies and procedures to be written, that we have a big opportunity to think about how we design for an agile distributed workforce. Absolutely. I think one thing that we didn't get into, and it's can be quite technical, it's a big topic in and of itself, but is to consider some of the neurological sensory profiles of workers. So not just the physical needs, not just the thinking, the decision, but how we interpret the sensory world. So for some people, having this space in their home office, if there's not a lot of distractions, can be really beneficial. It might provide the color scheme or the comfort, the aromas, the fragrances that really work for them, anything from their sensory world. They have a little more control over that. For others, they may be suddenly asked to work in amongst folks who, you know, have children at home and everybody vying for technology access and distractions in the workplace. That otherwise may be in the workplace, even more significant in the home space if they were also homeschooling at the same time as being expected to work, as some of our friends in Victoria are now being asked to do yet again. So that can be problematic. There are some people who go to work for that routine and structure, and Suzanne, you and I have talked about it, that work role is so important to them that suddenly being without it means that there's an opportunity that we make sure any technology has high fidelity, authenticity, and helps people socially engage. The term I don't like, I have to say, is social distancing, because I don't believe we need social distancing. We need geographic distancing, but we need social connection engagement. We need to be included as teams now more than ever if we're going to address some of the psychosocial. So I really consciously try to avoid that term, and I change it to geographic distancing and social inclusion.
And I think physical distancing is another good
physical distancing, sure.
Too. I'm very mindful of the time, and we've sort of come to time, but I'd really like to I think there's a nice summary here from Michelle Strother on this to everyone. Position papers like this are critical to creating platforms of common ground, common language, and cross-disciplinary alignment so that our knowledge and ideas are shared with improved outcomes in mind. I think that's really nice.
Thanks, Michelle. She was part of the committee. That wasn't well done.
And that wasn't placement. That was just spontaneity. But yeah, there's lots of great messages coming through. But I really want to acknowledge once again the crew, and particularly I do want to just do a shout out to Andrew, who did the videos. It was a lot of hours and work. So a particular acknowledgement of that, and Sarah for your lead on this project. But as you can see, it was a large group and a great outcome. The paper is up on the website. I wasn't sure if we were going to show that up on the screen tonight, but it's up under the. Can we do that, Nectaris?
I shared already on the chat 3 times.
The chat's moving so quickly, it's hard to see.
Yeah, I know. So
here it is. Yes.
Yes.
So it's on the chat to everyone. Take a look. There is a long and short version, and videos, and also an article. So encourage everyone to share alike. But yeah, I think that brings us to an end. Thank you, everyone.